Well, hey guys, welcome for another week of property news for UK property investors. So welcome. Lots has happened in the last week, I have to say. I've been fairly glued to the YouTube, and it's amazing actually because I haven't been watching the TV at all for any of the news, and I haven't done that for a long time. Haven't been reading the papers. Pretty much primarily YouTube and Google searches, which is quite interesting to keep up to date with all the happenings around the world in terms of COVID viruses, in terms of Trump being a child, which we all expected anyway. But a whole lot of stuff, new data's come out on redundancies. We've got the furlough extended, so there's a lot happening, and we're going to cover all that today. And we're going to look at the light at the end of the tunnel, because there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's really important, and it's important to keep sight of that actually we will get through this, and actually we've taken massive leaps and bounds, certainly with Biden winning and with the COVID vaccine, but also with things like Asia Pacific opening back up, and lots of talk about that happening, and airlines starting to bounce back. A lot of good things from that perspective, so we'll have a look at those. Awesome. Well, guys, look, if you can and help the channel out and help me out, is just press that like button. Make sure you subscribe. I love it. The Undertaker just wrote, "In the light at the end of the tunnel could be a train." And you know what? It could well be a train too, but you know what? Hopefully not. And actually, we'll chat more about this, but I don't think it will be. I think actually, if anything, the government and the amount of what they're prepared to do and what they're prepared to put behind it is going to work in our favour really, really well. I'm not talking about this, but I'm talking about not this, which is kind of what I've been saying for a long time. So, guys, any comments you've got, chuck them into the comments, and I can chuck them on screen. I can answer the question as we go through, or we'll leave it to the end, whichever works. But yeah, look. If you can, subscribe, like the channel, and if you're watching this after the actual live stream, then you'll see the chapters, because YouTube has the lovely chapters where you can actually go through and pick the story that you want to look at. Okay, so yeah, that's great. But look, let's start with what's been on every news channel, which is Biden wins the election. And actually, to be fair, it was even though it was very close at the start, it's turning out to be a resounding win. Certainly, 4 million more votes, and has a clear majority. Although, and we'll talk about this, it may turn out that it's not actually, he may turn out to be a lame duck president for the next 2 years. We'll see what happens if he can't win those 2 Senate seats. That's going to be the real challenge in Georgia. So, all eyes in January to that, and that's one of the challenges that he really faces now, is that. But look, as we expected, Trump is being an absolute child about it. He is a child, he never grew up. And I think, to be fair, I don't know whether his father wasn't there or whatever the psychologists will say, but, clearly the guy has some issues. He may have had money, and that may have got him off, but he is not the sort of person that you really want to be around, all that. And I think most of the world knows that, and that's why everyone's celebrating. Whether he was doing good, whether he was going against the corporate interests and things like that, I just didn't see it. I think he was out for himself, and I think we all know that, and I think nobody likes that. So, but yeah, look, guys, so, for me, Biden winning is a good thing, even though it's kind of the less of two evils for me. A lot of people might say, well, hold on a sec, this might be the issue where, Brexit doesn't work out for us very well, but, we'll see. The real thing to look out for, I think, is what happens in January, which is, look, there was 2 scenarios, and this is PB and Paribas did a webinar on this, and effectively what they were talking about, 3 options. The third option was that Trump won, which obviously he hasn't. Scenario 1 was where Democrats sweep with progressive, and they get the Senate and the House, and therefore they can actually implement stuff, which is really what you wanted. The thing that it's looking potentially to be like, or could be, is that Biden wins, but the Republicans have the Senate. And the problem with that, that's what they call lame duck, which is where you're the president, but you can't really get anything through without heavily negotiating it down. And the problem is, a lot of these things, if they get so watered down, nothing really happens. It happened with Obama, where yes, he got a few things down, but the reality is there's no major change. It's kind of stay the course, middle ground. That's not necessarily good for the issues that are happening over there. And I think but that really is more of a US issue than what's going to affect us, and us in the UK or around the world, the rest of the world. I think if anything, it's a positive You know, I mean, we don't have to listen to an idiot, you know, which is the first thing. But look, you know, the other side of it is that, you know, you've got Boris's, you know, you've got the one, these are two articles from two different things. You know, Brexit, huge US trade deal warning as historic phone, you know, leaves a sour taste. It's like, okay, fair enough. I don't know how they knew about this. Then special relationship, back on. Biden phones Boris ahead of France and Europe. It's amazing the spin that the media can take, eh? And I think the reality is that, you know, if anything, it's put Boris into a position that he was kind of already in because the Lords didn't agree to his internal markets act or bill. And really what that means is that he's got to go back to the negotiation table, you know. So I still think they will get a deal. I still think it'll be, you know, a deal that happens in the last hour of the last day of the last minute. And it will be, if anything, a lame duck deal, if I can use that word for the third time in this live stream. But I think that's really the, you know, where we're looking at with the Brexit side of things is we will get a deal. We will sort it out. The special relationship will continue because we're just too linked. And, you know, at the end of the day, because of that, we're linked in so many ways. Even though we're out of the EU, we are still very much in, you know, G20 and all those sort of things. And that will come through. And I think Boris is not stupid enough to try and go against that. You know, I think he's just playing the negotiation game, you know, which good on him, you know, fantastic. So that's the geopolitical news, if you like. Let's get more down into actually what's happening on the ground in the UK. So we were expecting this, which was unemployment to go up. It was at 4.5, it's now at 4.8. Redundancies. If you look at that bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that blue graph that all of a sudden jumps up to above 10%. Sorry, not 10%. It's per 11.3 per 1,000 employees. Okay. Now this is for July and September. If you remember, October was the end of the furlough scheme, and it was supposed to in November start the job support scheme. They've scrapped that. They've extended the furlough, which for me is awesome. Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But, you know, this, we were expecting the redundancies to go up. And I think, to be fair, there's nothing really, you know, as much as they're making news out of that, we're expecting this. We were expecting this. And we'll probably, the next figures that come out, we'll also see them jump up again because people were making decisions because furlough was ending, going to short job support scheme. Yeah. And, you know, businesses had to make decisions. And the problem was they extended the furlough on the last day of it. So, you know, you can say, well, that's a bad thing. But I kind of do feel for the government in the situation they're in where that, you know, they're trying to run an economy with so many different moving parts, you know, and actually, to be fair, what they've done, and I think this above all, is where I've been saying that winter's going to drop off. It hadn't dropped off yet, but actually what they've done now by extending the furlough through to spring, that means that actually now we've got not only a property market that's still potentially going to do well, we've got, you know, the economy that will still potentially do well, the unemployment figures that will be quite low. And actually, do you know what? And this is, I think, this whole test case, because I said, you know, I've been saying for a few weeks now, if you look at the Great Depression, yeah, the same situation that would happen now, or was in now, the same look and feel of the economy was back then. But the reaction was that they raised interest rates, whereas here, they've dropped interest rate, they've printed money into the thing. And so what that's meant is a totally reversed decision. I think that will play out, and I think in 2 or 3, 4 years' time, what we're going to see is perhaps not huge growth, but what we're going to see is we don't have that massive drop. And I think that is the key nowadays, modern days, to surviving a recession. You know, so I really, and I do really think that is the case. And for me, look, I've been very positive right the way through. You know, and on one side, you know, you sort of think, oh, maybe I've got to, you know, sort of put my feet on both camps. And, you know, there's a lot of YouTubers out there that are, you know, housing crash and blah, blah, blah. I haven't seen it, you know, and that's why I haven't been predicting it, because I haven't seen it. I still don't see it. And every decision that gets made, yes, it increases the debt. Yes, it kicks the can down the road a bit. But actually what it does for now, it gets us through the potential of this. Yeah, and that actually right now is far more important than the debt later on, because inflation and all sorts of things can get rid of the debt later on. You know, and with rates so low, the repayments on that debt is actually quite manageable. So, you know, it's for me, it's an interesting, you know, game right now. So good news, and I think we go into Christmas, and I think, I've said to my staff, because the furlough system's here, I've said, listen, because we're going to be taking 2, potentially 3 weeks off anyway, that just happens in our industry, okay? What we're looking to do is we're talking to the team about furloughing some of them, because why not? And that way they can have a good holiday, go off, and really, I guess, because, we've been working so hard. And so this is actually an opportunity, which is a great opportunity, if we can take it. Still talking about it, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. So one of the issues with this is that if you have a look, it's all great to say 4.8%, but actually check out 16 to 24-year-olds. And unfortunately, this is what happens in recessions. Those young people who aren't skilled, who are looking to get into the job market, who are in jobs that aren't, permanent, and, they can be retrenched and that sort of thing, they actually suffer the most. So 14.6%, which is quite high, okay? And, it hasn't jumped up massively, but it's still jumped up a lot more than the actual unemployment rate generally, okay? So, look at that unemployment rate down the bottom. It's not that actual bad. It doesn't look that bad. It's not one of these up, like that. Will it be? Well, we'll see. I think with what's in place, no, I think we are going to keep it at bay, certainly to the spring, and then you get the spring bounce, and hopefully by then the COVID vaccine's in, and we're everything's positioning to actually turn out pretty damn good, So, if you've got any thoughts, guys, pump it into the comments, and I'd love to get your feedback on that, So just what your thoughts are on where where we're going, if we're going to, do this, do that, or you don't know, But yeah, feel free to jump in. So, government extends furlough to March, and I've sort of already preempted this really. I mean, look, this is for me fantastic, because it gives ultimate flexibility where you can, lay staff off for a certain period, you can bring them back on, and because of that flexibility, that's going to allow businesses to see the way through this period. Okay, and it's not just that. There's the C-bills and the bounce backs and the extensions of those, to go from 6-year to a 10-year. And I think, this is all leading in the right direction. So for me, it's hard to sit here and go, what's the bad news? And I know all over the place, there's so many people saying, no, you wait, you just watch. Yeah, but I'm sorry, the stats and everything, and I'm looking around the world at the US, house prices going up. Australia, house prices going up. In fact, it's almost impossible to buy property there now. You just can't. I mean, it's a bit like the UK. It's weird. It's not weird. It is. There is so much money being pumped into the economy that's sure it's propping it up, and it's debt. That's right. But you know what? It's government debt on a very low rate. So I've sort of mentioned that. The interesting thing is, property market's showing far more resilience to the second lockdown. So this is quite interesting because a lot of people are saying, oh, second lockdown is going to be even worse than the first, and then people are saying it was going to be through Christmas and all this. I don't think it will be, I don't think it will be. I've thought, no, it'll be that, and then Christmas will open back up. Now, will they extend it for an extra 2 weeks or something? Maybe, but I think over Christmas, look, I think the reality is it's the UK. If anyone says you can't go and see your family over Christmas, there'll be these 2 fingers getting put up to a lot of politicians and police and all that sort of stuff. So in some ways, save the hassle, have a good Christmas, and but just be responsible and wear masks. And I think that's probably the message they should be saying is, hey, we're going to open back up, but be responsible. We've got the vaccine coming, so just hold out for a little bit longer and be responsible. And I think if they do that, that's likely to work really well. So let's see how we go. Yeah, UK house prices soared to record high. They just keep going up. It says 3-bedroom semi, they're $250,000 for the first time. This is the reality. I thought that come end of September, into October, things would start to slow down. November, December, January slow down. February starts to get a bit momentum up again. But we've gone all the way through into November, and November's kept going. And yes, things have slowed down a little bit. It's not the feverish pitch that it was. So, it is slowing down. But it's, with the furlough extension and lots of people are talking about the stamp duty extension. I don't think it will, all right? And the reason I don't think it will, and actually, I shouldn't say that. I think potentially they will change the way it's done. So, right now it's everybody gets stamp duty holiday. I think what they'll do is they'll say international investors need to pay this. whereas locals get this, so I think they'll put in a few measures like that. But it depends what happens over the next sort of 4 months, 5 months, until we get into that sort of spring bounce. So we'll see, but, I mean, it's hard to find, negative news, negative things. I mean, yeah, there's negative spin on everything. All these articles I've got negative spin on. But the reality is that's more because it wants to get headlines than actually being the reality from my perspective. So things are, they're looking pretty good. And I think, it's a good way to do it. Look, the other side of it is if you look at real house prices, yeah, this is, so 2015 is the base. In other words, everyone started 100 in 2015. And, you look at China, 30% growth, yeah. UK, 10%, which actually is below the OECD average, yeah. Italy is all the way down the bottom, So it's quite amazing when you think about it, what's happening there, It's not like we've got runaway prices. Now, yes, there's lots of that happening, but, at the end of the day, we haven't had that much capital growth. We've had austerity laid with Brexit, yeah, and now coronavirus, okay? So, yeah. So I've got this, Nicola, you try to compare the great, wait there, let me, hold on. Game looks like different, but however, finance is managed much better in digital age, so we see different workaround schemes and scale shift. Look, yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm giving a high level analysis of that. There's a lot of difference. Actually, back in the Great Depression, we didn't have credit cards. We didn't have, personal debt. We didn't have business debt, like that we do today. So it was a very different situation. It was very simplistic back then. It was very crude measures. Now we're a lot more refined. There's a lot more interactions. We did have a global economy like we do now. So there's a lot of differences, and I agree. So at some level it's wrong, but actually the other level is it's correct. I still stand by the fact that back then they effectively tried to raise interest rates to support the gold standard, because they had the gold standard back then. This time they're just printing money, which, look, we can go into a fiat currency, discussion and all that sort of stuff, but that's not for today. Yeah. So I think, look, they are different, but to be fair, so far the results have been very different. Yeah. And I think this is my prediction is that, we're not going to see a Great Depression, yeah, or an outcome of it, similar to Great Depression. If anything, what we'll do is we'll have, rather than having big growth, okay, it'll be subdued growth for a lot of years. Yeah. But that's, back when I first started in the finance industry years and years ago, we're talking like, 20, 25 years ago, people could get sort of 10%, 10, 15% returns. Recently it's been sort of 8 to 10s. And now you're sort of thinking, 5s to, 3 to 5s, that sort of thing. So the general rate of return has been dropping that you can expect. Now, sure, you can get more and you can get less, but the reality is that's kind of where it is. So James has just wrote, what's the advantages of investing in regen areas as opposed to already established areas like Chelsea and Fulham? Look, I think the problem with Chelsea and Fulham, and I mean, I should rephrase that. There is no problem with Chelsea and Fulham. They are the best fundamentals. Yeah, that's not going to change. But what you're not going to get is the massive growth rates, in there. You are going to get consistent growth rates because the fundamentals are the best. But what you get from a regeneration area is an area that perhaps is a lower price compared to where it'll be. So you get a very quick growth on that sort of stuff. And you're getting in at a lot cheaper price. And if you're getting in early on a regen area, then the great thing about that is that you can ride that the way up as that changes. And I think that's really, that's really important. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. But look, I love Chelsea and Fulham, but for most people, in fact, a lot of our clients really, that's not, they're not able to afford to get in there. And I always say, buy with the best fundamentals and buy the area where you can afford the best fundamentals. So if that means you can't afford London, you can afford Manchester or Birmingham or somewhere like that, then go to those areas. If you can't afford that, then step down to the next level, maybe a Leeds or a Nottingham or a Liverpool or or maybe even go out and get, houses in the suburbs or something like that. Like there's always options, yeah? You start wherever you can, and then as your portfolio builds up, you move into the better fundamentals, yeah? Good. So let's talk about London. London is as attractive as ever. You're going to start hearing a lot more now about London. Yeah, London's coming back. Make no mistake. We've seen it before. I've seen this, twice before. I've seen it. London is coming back. Yeah, exclusive new figures predict 20% growth. Beyond coronavirus and Brexit to 2025. 20%. Which look, I think that would probably be about right too. I think London has the best fundamentals, and then it ripples out from that. So it's right that we're already seeing London start to trigger, and then the ripple effect will take out. I mean, it's interesting. We're not so much looking in central London, okay, for our investors, but we're now going outside 345, but also to those commuter towns. So you're going to start to see a lot more property coming in, western suburbs, West London commuter towns, west of London commuter towns, I should say, and also north of London, because those are the areas where money's getting, put into, huge money. So, you're going to see that, and that ripple effect will affect out. But it's the same with the Manchester, it may not be the city centre where you're investing, but it may be slightly out, along those transport links and those fundamentals. And I think that's really important. The average price in London has gone up by 17,000 since May. That's not bad if you consider that most people are saying how bad rents have been in London, and they've been going down, and there's all these horror stories. I mean, we haven't really had the horror stories. Yeah, we've had rent drops, and yes, because there's a lot of Airbnb and there's a lot of service apartments that have come back onto the long-term market. Yeah, so that was a dump of supply, and obviously the demand was lower, so therefore it took some time, and therefore the rents dropped. It's a classic supply and demand. So, but the other side of it is, which I thought was interesting, is renters aren't quitting. After all, says Zoopla, which obviously there's much hyped exodus from London. People saying everyone's leaving, everyone's going to buy the race for space and all this sort of stuff. And I've been critical of it for a lot of times. There's certainly people doing that, but that doesn't mean that everyone's going to leave. I saw one thing that 1.2 people have already left London. And it's like, okay, fair enough, but a lot of those have probably gone back to their parents' places. They've gone, so it's not a case of that all of a sudden London is going to be dead and London is far too robust for this. It's seen this many times before, and it will continue to see more, So I think really, it's all great for the headlines, but you got to read beyond the headlines. And when you look at this, London still has the fundamentals, and second lockdown has slowed things down again. And there's people in the streets who don't want to wear masks and things like that. That's their choice, I guess. Is it their choice, or is it whatever? I'm not going to get into that politics. But look, I think what will happen is, yes, fundamentally our work patterns will change. Yeah, so it'll be a blend of work from home and work from office. It won't be this everyone's going to work from home. In fact, most of our staff don't want to work from home. Now, do they want the option of being able to? Yeah, and that's where the blend comes in. And I think that's where the blend comes in. And this exodus that people talk about, the exodus is more going to be around the fact that people want to move to areas where those areas, the local areas, have a local community. Yeah. So don't think that just because you go find somewhere cheap that's a crappy area with no fundamentals, no transport, anything like that, that you're going to be on a winner because you got in before everyone else moved there. They're not going to move there. They're going to move to where the best fundamentals are. It's, this is what happens every single time. Yeah. So COVID vaccines, nearly 2 trillion traded on the news of COVID vaccines. The interesting thing is, we're talking about one company, which was Pfizer. So, they were they basically are a well-known company, and that's great. But, Singapore has a vaccine as well. They reckon it'll be early 2021. It'll be out, and the government's committed to 300 million bucks. UK's got their one with Oxford University, I think it is. But I just said, how many vaccines are being tested? 154 in preclinical trials, 21 in phase 1, 12 in phase 2, and 11 in phase 3. So it's a race to see who gets the first one out. But the first one in this case won't just be the winner, because the challenge is you've got to get it out and then you've got to mass produce it. And the thing is, at the same time you're mass producing, somebody else is going to come up with their vaccine, And then of course they're going to mass produce it. So it's, you know, it's a race, it's a sprint, and certainly, you know, you're getting the good thing. But to be fair, there's a lot of options. Even if that one doesn't work, there's another one to be had. And I think that's, you know, for me, this is the good news. Yes, we got it out before Christmas. And, you know, as Trump said, it was him that did this and it was their project, whatever, I can't remember the name of the project. But it wasn't, because apparently Pfizer didn't take any money in, you know, from the government. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. The light at the end of the tunnel, and as the understanding, it might be a train. No, I think it is a light. You know, Australia may open borders to Asia as it records third day without local COVID-19 cases. Yeah, Singapore has pretty much got to the point where it doesn't have cases, you know, every day now. China is the same. New Zealand is the same. You're starting to get a lot of the South Pacific places, Asia Pacific, sorry, that are now pretty much clear. Okay, and I think that's really good. I think that's, for me, that actually shows that we do have a path out of here, and I think that above all else, that will really work well for us. Okay, and I think, you know, look, I think one of the things is this whole game is that, you know, if we can do it in Asia Pacific, then hopefully Europe sees how it's done, gets out of it. You know, US sees how that, you know, Africa, you know, and we can all get out of it, and we can be putting this behind us, quick, smart. I mean, you know, it has happened pretty quickly, to be fair, you know, so a lot quicker than a lot of people sort of thought. But it just shows you, I mean, we've always said this, you know, as a human race, you know, we've always been able to, when the chips are on the table, you know, chips are down, we come out with a solution, we get that done, you know. It's a shame that we don't deal with some of the other problems, you know, like world hunger and water, you know, and all that sort of stuff in the same way. Methinks that there's some corporate interests there that maybe are prohibiting it from happening in that same way. You know, but that's just my opinion. Look, guys, so I think, you know, overall, it's been a bloody good week. You know, you can't really sit there and say, you know, I mean, everything points towards good things. You know, so before we kick off, I just want to show you a new tool that I've got. So if you go onto gladfish.com, and you can actually go to gladfish.com/how many houses. And if you go there, I've got this new calculator. You can also go to tools in the navigation, and then it's got how many houses. And basically what that does is I've already put in there, okay, here, which is the average income. So this is 15,080 is the average retirement income for someone now, yeah, which is pretty extraordinary. That's what most people survive on. The average person survives on in retirement, yeah. So that's 1,250 per month, yeah. 868 is the average rent in the UK, yeah. So basically, if you took that, you know, that income, that rent, and 35% costs take off that rent, and assume that you haven't got any mortgages. By the time you retire, you've paid all your finance off. Well, you're going to need 2.22 houses, yeah, in order to fund that, yeah. So when I talk about the 3+1 plan, actually, you know, that's not so bad, yeah. So I think this is, you know, it's really interesting if you do that. Now you can go on there and you can put in whatever figure you want, you know. So, you know, for instance, if we go over here, I've put in 45,000, you know, which is 3,750, and the average rent I've lifted up a bit, which is 1,200, okay, 35% costs, 4.8 properties. So if you from now, yeah, said, right, my target is to get 5 properties by the time I retire, all paid off. And then the way we do it is we actually build that portfolio up over time, yeah, fully managed, all that sort of stuff done for you. And we might build 10 houses with mortgages. And then when it comes to retire, if you want, most people don't, most people keep the finance, or as long as they can, and let inflation pay it off. We then pay off half, and then that half pays off the other half. You've got 5 properties. And that is your retirement fund looked after. So guys, if you want to know more about that, what I suggest you do is you join in on our weekly webinar series that we've got going now, which is the autumn webinar series. Next week, we go through how to start in property, 3 simple strategies to get going and not lose your shirt, yeah? And I think that the real thing here with this is, this whole series is designed, you know, we started off with big picture and we looked at disruption and AI and a lot of these sort of big picture. Now we're getting down to the nitty gritty concepts, yeah, of how to do it. And I think, you know, it's really interesting. If you want to get involved in that, you know, just go to, you can either, you can go to gladfish.com/webinars, or if you've got any questions generally, then you can send them to webinars@gladfish.com, and I'm happy to answer those either as part of this, okay? So if you're not watching live, you can by all means do that. And the other side of it is make sure you subscribe to my channel, and I'd love it if you like the video, and keep that in thing. Because look, right now there's so much what I call white noise. There's so many things pulling your attention away from how negative things are and how bad things are. But the reality is things are actually pretty damn good right now, and the future is looking pretty damn good. So don't think for a moment that because we had this massive drop because COVID, that things aren't going to come back. I mean, the amount of money, we've had a 40% increase in the money supply, which is unprecedented. Yeah, that will work its way through the economy in various ways. Now, sure, most of that is going to go to the top 1%. That's just the structure of life right now. But a lot of it is getting into the everybody's pocket, every person's pockets, and that's one of the great things I love about this furlough scheme. It's one of the concepts that I love with the universal basic income, and okay, there's issues with universal basic income, but I think there's no reason why this, as a test case, we'll see in a few years' time, because I think it's going to turn out to be quite a good thing. Yeah. So guys, that's it for this week. If you've got any questions, chuck them into the comments right now, and I'll be happy to answer them. But if not, otherwise you can just go to webinars@gladfish.com, and I'm happy to answer them. Any questions you've got, you can call the team, you can email the team, and we're more than happy to answer it. More than happy to give you, our 2 cents in predictions and where we think things are going and how your strategy can work or not work, and all that sort of stuff. We're here to sort of help you guys. But look, thank you very much. The amount of money supply is scary. You know what? I'll put that on screen. Yeah, look, the amount, just to talk about that, the amount of money supply is scary. And it is. There's no two ways about that. I don't think you can really look at it any other way. It is scary because it's unprecedented. But I think there's an increasing acceptance from all governments that this is the way to get through a recession right now. Yeah, and yes, it goes against everything that Keynesian economics talks about and things about. But the reality is, it is working. Now, I mean, what it's meaning is the asset prices have to keep increasing. That's happening anyway. So it is happening. Undertaker just wrote fix for 2 to 5 years. Yeah, look, you can fix really low. And that's why I think the inflation, the sting in the tail that most people say, well, we've got to have a huge inflation after this to deflate that debt. Actually, if you look at the 10-year fixed rates, they're not that much more than the 5-year fixed rates and not that much more than the 2-year fixed rates, which means that the funders are either locking in really long-term finance now, which is one aspect, or the other aspect is they're predicting that interest rates aren't going to be going up massively. They're going to stay around where they are. So, we'll see. But look, I think, there's lots of opportunity right now. And I think that the trick is not to be blindsided by all the negative, things and that sort of stuff. Oh, sorry, Undertaker. So the Undertaker just wrote first time buyer with 20% deposit. Which option is better? I'm not really sure I understand what the question is. So if you could type it in there, I'll answer it. But yeah, so, look, there's huge opportunities out there. And as long as you're not, the news is there to have the headlines. And, unfortunately that's, and a lot of them are the majority of the negative headlines, unfortunately. But I think the real key is, how does it affect your portfolio? How does it affect your career? Things like disruption, all that. And when you work all that out, actually, you might find that now there's no better time to invest than now. The rates are insane. I mean, we're talking, I've got some clients who are talking about 1.9%, which is just extraordinary, and, the cash flow on that is so cheap, and they're able to lock that in for 2 to 5 years. Okay. So yeah. Guys, I haven't got that. Undertaker, if you send that through to webinars at Glad. Oh no, here we go. Try and get a mortgage. I'm wondering about to take a 2-year. Oh, okay, gotcha. So should you take a 2-year or a 5-year fix? it's a hard question to answer, and I'll answer it for you as best I can with the limited information I've got. It depends on your portfolio. If you reckon that you're not going to be buying any property for the next two years or 5 years because of your cash flow situation, because of the capital situation, if you're buying, your own home versus an investment, there's a lot of different aspects like that. Look, if you're buying your first house, oftentimes fixing so you know exactly what it is. If your income is very tight and you don't want the fluctuations, then fix it. But if it's going to stay low, quite low, well, actually a variable may be the trick. So it's hard to know. But actually, Undertaker, if you send an email to me at webinars@gladfish.com, I'm more than happy we'll anonymize it. But what I'll do, if you give me some more details about your situation, I'm happy to do a video on it. Because I think that's really interesting to know, fixed or variable, because there's different aspects to look at. It's not just a case of, well, this is what's happening, so therefore fix it. Okay, it depends on what your goals are. It depends on what your situation is financially in terms of cash flow, in terms of how much capital you got. That's all sorts of things that we take into account when we're making that sort of decision. But that's what the team do. That's what the guys are really experienced at doing. We do that all the time. So yeah, guys, I think that's it for now, unless there's anything else. I want to say thank you for joining in. That's been great, and we'll see you again same time next week. If you're interested in joining us for the autumn webinar series, and that how to start in property, then just go to gladfish.com /webinars and sign up to it's the autumn webinar series, and we'll see you on there. All right, guys, have a great night, and we'll chat real soon. See you later. Bye.